Oh shit, here we go again.
Low, low, man. Low, low, man.
You like contracts, right? You're a contract guy.
I read contracts instead of conventional pornography, yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
What's up, everybody? It's Bory Andrew, Esquire's Legal Mindset, teach you to be your own judge. Fun one today, talking about Pam Bondi and Antifa. Both of them are terrorists, but in different ways. And we're going to get into that today on the show. This is going to be a fun one. I got a fast facts lined up after this, which will be more concise. I may ramble. I'm going to go through a little bit more, X posts on the live version and also interact with you guys. This one, it's very interesting because I actually, to be honest with you guys, and I don't talk about this on the fast facts, it's just for you live viewers. But I actually scuffed the fast facts I was going to drop yesterday, and it was just on Antifa. But I'm glad it scuffed because so much happened in the last 24 hours. What I said yesterday would be moot, and I would have to do another whole new episode with all this new information. So ultimately, my scuff, where I forgot to plug in my microphone correctly and I was completely muted the entire time, worked out in my favor. Also, I realize, I'm trying to give a very fair perspective, and I'm trying to give out punches, equal lefts and equal rights when it's deserved, right? Now, I'm not going to say, it's both sides here, right? Because obviously, when it comes to the violence and the incitement of violence, that is clearly in this present instance, without a doubt, we're talking about this last couple weeks, this last 2 or 3 weeks, the incitement to violence has by and large been the radical left. It's not been both sides. However, this is the important thing, and this is what everybody needs to remember, and this is what I'm going to focus on. The application of the law will last forever. Let me say it again. The application of the law will last forever. And if we set a bad precedent here, this can be used in the future against people on both sides, including on the right? So while the right is in power now and they're feeling themselves, a lot of people are pushing for things that when the shoe is on the other foot, it will completely change everything. And for example, one reason why I'm going after Pam Bondi is pushing us into an UK, Orwellian UK style hate speech regime, which once again, while it's under control of Trump, you may be comfortable, but once that shifts over, you're screwed, right? That's the problem here. That's what people don't see. You don't want to go down these roads that you're being led down. And it's to the point where I'm actually thinking that she may be even an op or like a plant because she is so stupid, right? It's dangerous. It is dangerous to the country. You cannot have somebody as attorney general who doesn't know what the hell they're doing. They're in charge of not just executing the laws, but they also help drafting the new laws and whatever, and making these designations, executive orders. It is so important a competent person be in that position, right? So I just, I love this post here by Robert Sterling. I'm gonna play the video of Bondi talking later, but this is so true right here. This is so true right here. The most uniting thing ever. Pam, what the f- are you talking about? Liberals and conservatives can all come together on this and be like, you have no idea what the hell you're talking about. And we need somebody who is competent in that position. And I know she was probably hired because she's blonde and Trump likes blondes. He also likes loyal people. And she's always been a party operative who's been super loyal, but we need competence right now. And there's so many competent lawyers. Now, I do have a goal today. If we hit the goal, you can throw Legal Mindset in the ring for Attorney General, right? If we hit the goal, right? I'll allow you guys to put my name up for consideration. Of course, I will have to work remotely. That's a job requirement. I have to work remotely. But if you can put my name in there in the ring for AG, because literally anybody, even a simple Florida lawyer like myself, would be a better AG than Pam Bondi. She actually does not know what she's doing at all whatsoever. And by the way, who in the chat said, "Oh, you're sexist"? Are you kidding me? There are so many good female attorneys that would make great AGs. There are so many female attorneys that are competent and they're Republican, whatever else. So if he wants to pick a Republican that's competent, there are other Republican female attorneys that are competent. I know many of them. Some of my best friends in Orlando when I was practicing there, they'd be great AGs. They'd make a great AG in a second, right? In a second. But I know, especially as a Floridian, everybody knew she was a political operative, right? Not somebody who's competent. And everything she's done in the administration so far, everything, including what she did in Florida, she's bungled everything, even things that should be legal layups. She completely and utterly failed. So anyways, we got a PP today, but let's get into the stupidity of her first. Let's play this video before we get into the PP, because you guys got to hear this. This is the stupidest thing ever, right? And I'm going to explain to you why it's so stupid, but just listen up here to this idiocy.
There's free speech and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie in our society.
Do you see more law enforcement going after these groups who are using hate speech and putting cuffs on people, so we show them that some action is better than no action?
We will absolutely target you, go after you if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything. And that's across the aisle.
Okay. Real quick. This is the stupidest thing I've heard ever. This does not exist legally. Any person, even a 1L, knows this doesn't exist legally in the United States. Now, in the UK, it does. You're seeing how that's going for the UK. We're having fun with that. We had the UK threatening to arrest Americans over free speech. We do not want to become the UK. This would likely be illegal anyways. If the Supreme Court would likely overturn this garbage anyways. But that said, she has no idea what the hell she's talking about. She has no idea. And as the Attorney General, this is inexcusable. You cannot make this massive mistake. And we're going to explain exactly the distinction between, hate speech and what is a hate crime and what's permissible speech and impermissible speech in just 1 second. Of course, I have a PP, guys. Of course, I have a PP. But before I get to that, let me get through some of these chats because I don't want to get too behind. So Sea Lion Prime says, hope everyone is having a good evening. I am too. Doug Diaz, thank you for the 10 Legal Mindset memberships. Thank you. Yes. Hika, also thank you for the 5. Thank you guys, Doug Diaz and Hika. You guys are great OGs, right? Rona Zora was here, says, is it fair to say Bondi was advocating for compelled speech when she said that imprinting businesses would have to print Kirk memorial pamphlets? She needs to be fired. Yes, that's compelled speech. We don't want that. Once again, this is why I think she might be a plant, because imagine the precedent for being able to compel speech. That is insane. And once again, I'm fair with the left and the right. I don't want this in law, period, because this can be abused both ways. I don't want that. CJ Maldo said, hey, Legal Mindset, hope your day is going well. Don't worry about the scuff. We live for it. Saludos de Puerto Rico. Hey, saludos. Hope you're doing well there, all my Latino and Latina brothers and sisters. Table Turns for 10 Canadian says, she's a plant. Look at Trump's initial pick, Matt Gaetz. Could he get through the rhinos and Dems, and Bondi flew right through, no issues. That's what I'm saying, boys and girls. That's what I'm saying. You know, at least Gaetz had the brains for it, right? Now he's controversial, etc. But you can't deny he's a smart guy. He's a clever guy, right? She's completely unqualified for this position. Brown Bear says for 10, while I agree that Bondi needs to be fired, I also don't think the left will wait for the right to do something before they will use it against the right. Don't forget, they already arrested Trump's lawyers. Yes, and the states are going to fight back against this. And what I want to see is a legal strategy that is competent. Because if Trump and the administration bungle this, which they've bungled so many other things, they bungled Epstein, they bungled a lot of other things through sheer incompetence, this will be a tragedy and this will backfire massively. It needs to be done the right way with precision, with a scalpel, like a surgeon. What they're doing is tossing a hand grenade in a random direction and hoping it hits. That's not how you do things in the law. That's not how you do things in the law. And look, an occasional typo here, a little bit of scuff there, that's fine. This is a major mistake, right? King Lugia for 1 Legal Mindset membership. Thank you so much. Hugh Janus says, Pam Bondi, she's the only one who caused all the Epstein files. I don't know why Donald keeps running. Exactly. And you know what? In all of this, are we not forgetting the Epstein files too soon? Right? Let us not forget that. And as we look at Pam Bondi and say, do we trust her? Remember the Epstein files, right? It's like, remember the Alamo, right? Remember the Epstein files. Do not forget that, right? Rocambola Gin Blades, the stereotype we have over here is that blondes are dumb. Seems true in the case of the AG. Andrew for AG, let's go. Also, I nominate myself for Chief of Ministry of Truth. Totally unbiased, I swear. Well, look, listen. No, I know a lot of very smart blondes. One of my favorite coworkers, very, very smart girl, extremely hardworking, super smart. She's a blonde. They're extremely smart blondes. But that said, I think that, once again, Trump tends to pick people, if we just look at his personal preferences, that are sometimes just operatives or faithful or people he personally likes, right? That's fair to say. You just look at that. It's his history. It's his, you might say, his weakness or his soft spot. In this moment, he needs people to come and say, look, we need a competent person. Like JD needs to lean over and be like, hey, Trump, this girl's got to go. We got to get somebody that's going to do this right. Because I think JD Vance gets it. I think he's smart enough to get it. I think, it is something that we can get through. Halogen says, BK made the classic blunder of instinctive reaction to political news. That's right. I'm going to talk about Brian Cranston later. He really screwed up about the Antifa stuff. And that's the back half of this. But that also relates to Bondi, because once again, remember, Bondi is responsible for how this terrorist designation is going down. And as I see it, she's completely bungling it. Felzu said, the scuff is why we're here. Welcome, Andrew. You're welcome. Japanese Demon Lord of Bar Lucifer says Antifa versus Patriot Act. Who will win? It can be, here's the thing. If this goes down wrong, this could be more overbroad than even the Patriot Act. And guys, if you know anything about the Patriot Act, you know it rolled back our rights a lot. Richard Berna says she was the same way when she was AG in Florida. That's right. El Pareva says you can get fired for speech. You can't get jailed. That's exactly right. And this is a great distinction. I made this, on Side Scrollers. I did a guest appearance there. There is a massive difference between what you can be fired for, which is almost anything, right? You can be fired for almost anything. As long as they're not firing you based on race, sex, orientation, etc., they can fire you for pretty much any reason at all. However, going to prison is different. So yes, you can be fired over speech. That is a thing. You can be fired over speech. However, you can't be jailed over what is speech. It has to be an impermissible form of speech. Music and Fiction says at least Harmeet Dillon came in and cooled it. Yep. Elbar Ava said, Elbar Ava for Attorney General. There we go. R2 Crows, I said, glad to be here. I've learned so much very quickly. And I'm trying to educate. Today is going to be very educational. This is a lot of stuff that even lawyers are messing up right now. Sir Guard Pebble of the Nettle Soup says, as a Brit, the bouncy bubble scares me. I am not number one. I am a free man. And I fear for the Brits, guys. You guys have extreme speech crackdowns where you can't even express, what is clearly a fact over there. And I had that conversation. I was hanging out with two very based Polish gentlemen last night. One of them's from Zurich. One of them spends a lot of time here. Super cool Poles. And all of them say the UK is the worst off in sort of the decline in Europe. And I guess my British brothers and sisters, you can tell me whether you agree or disagree on that one. The Professor Keene says this is happening while Trump is in the UK. Very interesting. Richard Berna says while she was AG in Florida and decided not to charge Trump University when she had all of the evidence, that was her interview. Let's get into this. Nate the lawyer. So a lot of the news is saying that this complaining about Pam Bondi is coming from the right. My good friend Nate the lawyer is a lefty. Now, he's not a hard lefty. He's actually a very centrist lefty. He's a lefty where most of the Antifa people disagree with him. And he's my friend. I've met him in person. He's a really good guy. He's a genuine guy. He's a smart lawyer. He's competent. He did work in the police department. He knows what he's talking about. He's a really, really smart guy, makes good content. I highly recommend his channel. He's a really good guy, but he's a leftist. And I disagree with him on some of his political points and some other things, right? But even he and me and many other people are saying this war on hate speech is very concerning. Hate speech is free speech. See National Socialist Party of America versus Village of Skokie. There are very limited exceptions, but going down this thought police route is insane. And I agree with him. I absolutely agree with him here, right? What is free speech? Free speech is ideas, opinions, debate, dissent. These are all permissible speech. You cannot stop ideas, even hateful ideas. Let's say you hated, I'm just going to make it people from Jupiter, because there's nobody from Jupiter. So, hey, all those Jupiter people, I hate them. They're horrible, disgusting, vile pig monsters, right? You can say that. There's nothing against you saying that. Now, there is something if you call them a criminal. That's called defamation. You can't do that. You cannot defame people. But you can call them names, right? And you can debate, you can dissent. And what Pam Bondi doesn't understand, yes, you leave the Jupiterians out of this, Andrew. I know. Jovian lizard hate. I know. I am so against those Jovians, those dirty Jovians. They're really inferior species. I mean, their planet is so big. They must be compensating for something, you know? Why is your planet got to be so big? Come on. You know, what's going on downstairs in Jupiter? Huh? I'm just saying. We have fun on Legal Mindset. Okay. Hate speech is different than hate crime. So what in hate crime is hate speech, which is an idea alone. Hate crime is an idea plus a criminal act. So yes, that's illegal, but it's mainly illegal because it's a crime. So if you rob somebody, right? That is a crime in and of itself. It's robbery. But if you rob somebody because they're from Jupiter, we're going to use that. They're going to use Jovians. They're Jovian, right? That would be a hate crime because you're using their distinction as a Jovian to rob them. That's going to be a new inside joke. Jovians is going to be a new inside joke on our channel. By the way, guys, I'm going to have to do a mindset lore stream because I realize I have so many new viewers. Not everybody knows all the lore. So I'm going to have to do a lot of lore here. It's going to have to be a lore video. It's like halfway to a VTuber, guys. Bondi doesn't also seem to understand the very basic concept, the very basic distinction between hate speech and hate crime. And that's such an important distinction. I love it. My best friend is Jovi. Sorry, that's good. America has a Saturnal race problem. Okay, let me get some of these chats that we're going to talk about impermissible speech. Orange 33, it says Pam Bondi equal Leo Giovanni. Look up Giovanni. I'm pretty sure I know who that is. Let's see. That's the accountant charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Okay, yeah, that's pretty. There we go. Okay. They're Jupiter people in Crossbone Gundam. Thank you for bringing up Gundam. I love Gundam. This is a name, says I am from Jupiter and I find that offensive. Jupiter, Florida? Are you from Jupiter, Florida? That does not count. That does not count. There's a I know. I'm a Floridian. Of course I know there's a Jupiter, Florida. My I'm not going to say who because that'll like soft dox me. But I knew a lot of people in Jupiter, okay? Also, I think Megan Fox lived near Jupiter for a while. One of my friends from law school went to high school with her near Jupiter, not in Jupiter, but near. Went to school with her. She was apparently not as hot in high school, apparently. Billy Aoki, first 2 Singaporean, says free speech implies existence of premium speech. Neo Sander says, could Jovian appeal for insanity plea? Okay, let's. Where we have a clip for this. We have
No. Wait.
Yeah. So long says Rubio says criticized American passports revoked. I haven't seen anything about that. Maybe that's off my radar. Joshua Villarreal says late night here in Florida. Happy versary LM. Here's to more streams. Great listen. There's learn to stream while I dev it up. Shout out to the chat mods for keeping it cool. Thank you. Keep it reasonable, guys. Keep it within the TOS. Core this says, here's some well-earned thanks for a signal boost earlier. Much appreciated. Oh, hey, appreciate that. I think I know who you are. You emailed me up, but I won't say your name. But he encouraged everybody to contact the representatives about the congressional hearing. So if you guys don't know, let me actually show this one real quick. I'll take a little pause here before we get to impermissible speech. We'll kind of meander here, but I want to give a shout out because this was a boost, a signal boost here for this message about the hearings that are going to go on with Dan Clancy and all the other big Discord, Steam. They're all being called in by Congress. This is Dan Clancy being called in before Congress. Right. So obviously the best thing to do is to contract your representative here and to get them to understand internet culture, because unfortunately, most of the representatives in Congress are boomers. And no offense, some boomers do understand the internet. Some are very internet savvy. Some are super smart. Right. Some are very, very savvy, even more than me, more than other people. Right. I'm kind of stupid. Right. I'm kind of an idiot. But they do need to have internet culture and what's going on explained to them because they don't honestly understand it. So you need to contact them and say, hey, this is a problem. Why? Here's some clips. Here's some information. Help them out to be able to have that hearing and to grill Dan Clancy and say, why the hell haven't you banned this guy even though he's breaking your TOS, right? So that was a post by 8-inch Tom on X. I kind of single boosted that, so I'm happy to do that, and thank you for the tip there. Okay, Dasby Gun, and let me get back to the slides here. We got to get back to the PP. I can't ever give up the PP. It's very important to keep your PP up at all times. If I remember, Charlie Kirk would be against this. Yes, Charlie Kirk actually has a quote that says hate speech does not exist. And so Charlie Kirk himself would be against what Pam Bondi said. So if we're doing it for Charlie, we need to do it for Charlie and get rid of Pam Bondi, because Pam Bondi doesn't understand Charlie. Charlie is a better lawyer as a non-lawyer than Pam Bondi. Bob Nogitz said Bondi has to be the worst AG. What the heck is she on about with hate speech crap? She must work for the rhinos or be an undercover Dem. Yeah, it's one of the two. She's working with the Republicans that are allied with the Democrats, or she's an undercover, or she's just stupid. She's just that stupid. But any of those situations, right? So whichever one that is, it really doesn't matter. It's irrelevant whether she's stupid, whether she's an op, whether she's just working with the ally Republicans that are really want the status quo to maybe maintained. Whatever it is, she's got to go. Maxa Papa says Jupiter-sized scuff. That's right. Crimson Splat says superior male, Jovian race forever, Martian successor. That's who got. You know what? That is a W. That is a W.
Yes.
It's a very based anime. Very based anime. I love it. Rocambola Jim Blade says Martians are more clearly based in Jovi. Okay, here we go. We're getting into the planetist. This is high level racism here, guys. This is higher level. When we get into planetary, and then we're going to go into universal, like solar system. We're like, yo, you Milky Way incels, you got nothing on the Andromeda Chads, right? The Andromeda Chads. Josh said slander evidence. Megan Fox Transformers. That's when she was older. I'm saying high school because this is a person who knew her when she was much younger, right? Hurtbox says, yes, premium speech exists. Hassan gets to defame people without consequences. And that is going to end, I think, soon. Hassan knows a reckoning is coming. He's scared. He is terrified right now. He is going on every platform he can go on because he is absolutely terrified. He knows he's under the gun. Kyle Johnson for 5 says, Hassan likes to skirt around permissible speech and impermissible speech. Why is this able to be permitted? Is it truly legal? It's really not, because, and I'm going to get to impermissible speech right now. Him saying it's hyperbole, and actually I'll even play the clip. I wasn't planning to do this, but I'll play the clip for you guys. If I have it, if I can find it. Hassan saying that he was being hyperbolic. That's what he said in an interview with Australia. Doesn't matter. It still makes it impermissible, even if it's hyperbolic, because it wasn't presented in such a way that you look a reasonable person, right? And especially with the course of his overall conduct and his overall theming, would not be incited to violence. Even if he says, oh yeah, in Minecraft at the end. That's not a get out of jail free card. Yes, in some circumstances, comedy can be comedy. But when you look at the overall theming of his overall program, his overall messaging, his overall trend, his overall chat, it's extreme, 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 extreme. It's like the Maoist Red Guard, right? Brandon, the anime guy, is a new member. Welcome. Joshua Davis says, hey, in Warhammer 40K, Jovian is actually what they call humans whose ancestors settled on Jupiter's moon, mostly during the Great Crusade era. Very based 40K lore. Richard Burna says, boomers created the internet and Gen X created the World Wide Web. Yeah, and once again, exceptions don't speak the rule, but you are correct. You're very correct. And once again, it's more of a tongue-in-cheek, right? But I guess what I'll say this is, most people in Congress, let's correct that, because precision of speech is important. Most people in Congress are unaware of internet culture, right? They're very unaware of internet culture. The people in Congress. Fair enough? Fair enough. We won't go into generational battles here. Let's unite the generations. Euro Clegane says BLM equal base legal Martian. That sounds like merch. Base legal Martian. Mario, by the way, we are going to have an emotional support cabbage. I'm going to spoiler alert. It's coming. It's being made right now. Emotional support cabbage. Mario Trujillo for 21 months says Bondi seems like somebody whose ego exceeds the skill. That's right. Erdy says Bondi said that on Stephen Miller's wife's podcast. That's what I'm saying. She actually screwed that up. We showed the video earlier. Al Durr says Jovians need to rise up before it's too late. Look at what happened to the Plutonians. We do not want the systemic racism that happened to the Plutonians to happen to the Jovians. Protect the Jovians. Okay, here we go. Impermissible speech. This is what, if you look at what should be focused on, and everything that I have focused on is in these 4 categories. This is what, under existing law, that we do not need to change. We do not need new laws. Let me say this again. We do not need new laws. We need to enforce our existing laws and have the courage to enforce our existing law. For too long, we've held back in enforcing our law against the radical left. In this case, right? Once again, yes, the law applies equally to the left and the right. And if there's somebody on the right that does something wrong, that's fine. But let's be honest right now. Right now, the problem is the radical left. And they've gotten a pass on a lot of this stuff. And now they're not getting a pass. And now they're scared, right? By and large. But once again, if it comes up on the right, it will be applied as well. Just look at these 4 categories. This is more than enough. Incitement. This is Hassan. This is 100% Hassan, right? Speech that directly incites imminent lawless action or criminal activity. Boom. That's Hassan, right? You want to go after Twitch? That's what it is. Incitement. Twitch is incitement. Twitch is a breeding ground for incitement. Also, harassment, creating a hostile environment. You know what we haven't done, guys? You know what we've been afraid to do? You know what America's been really afraid to do? But it might be time to really enforce harassment for being categories, which in the past we viewed as the powerful category or the category that we never, ever try to protect. Being a white male, being a white woman, right? Being an Asian male, an Asian woman, a lot of times they're discriminated against, right? These things we need to enforce, right? Make people accountable under existing laws. Those that already exist. Defamation, right? Defamation is already on the books. False statements that harm reputation. We don't need to expand defamation at all. We just need to go after people for things that are harming reputation. And we need to maybe make it easier. Maybe we need to make the defamation process easier. Maybe that's fine. But we don't need to change what is defamatory so that it becomes compelled speech, right? There are a lot of statements that are being made right now that are defamatory. And we do need to clean up defamation. Guys, if you've been on the internet, if you see what people say on Reddit, on X, on Blue Sky, freaking Blue Sky, oh my God. Like all these places, a lot of that's defamation. Twitch, a lot of that needs to be cleaned up. You can't call somebody a criminal. And honestly, I do think, and we're going to talk about that with the Smith-Mund Amendment, which we're trying to call the Charlie Kirk Amendment. I don't think Charlie Kirk would be okay with that, by the way. I do think words like Nazi and words like white supremacist should be defamation because there's a clear definition, right? So you can say, okay, Nazi means you're a member of the National Socialist Party of Germany between the 1920s and 1945, or you openly declare yourself as a Nazi. White supremacist, you're a member of a group which openly espouses, openly has white supremacist views, or you call yourself one, right? Those are pretty clear. Bigot, racist, other ones we'll talk about, the more ambiguous, but you're able to get, okay, what is defamation or not? And then last is a true threat. A true threat is a true call for violence, which, by the way, a lot of what Hassan has said, like when Hassan said, delete them, spill their guts in the street, right? That's pretty much a true threat. He's saying it's hyperbolic, but that's damn close to a true threat. It's definitely incitement. Without a doubt, this is incitement. But is it a true? It's pretty damn close. With the Rick Scott thing, that was really close too to a true threat. So that's impermissible speech. Once again, we don't need to go further. This is the Smith-Mund Act Amendment. Now, this has been trending on social media. People have seen this a lot. And this is one I'm worried about because once again, I have zero faith. I have zero faith that Pam Bondi can write the law for this and know what the hell she's talking about and then prosecute people under this. I have zero faith in this, right? Imposing fines on media. So it's going to be Media Accountability Act. They're trying to keep the media accountable. They want to call it the Charlie Kirk Act. I think that's dangerous because they're invoking his name when he's not. I'm not sure he would sign off on this. but it's trying to impose fines on media, right? Which once again, people can say, oh, look, that's good. That's good. But remember, ladies and gentlemen, when this swings the other way, this could be applied against you. And one thing it could end up as is a precursor to a social credit system, a social credit score, an American social credit score, by giving the companies a score, right, for quote unquote accountability, right? So they want to target language like bigot, racist, fascist. And also you could target Nazi and white supremacist. I might not have a problem with this, but this is really dangerous, right? Because imagine a world where the left is in control now, right? So the left is in control and they're now deciding what the word bigot, fascist, and racist means, right? They can apply that the other way, right? It can go both ways, right? So you want to be very careful with this. I'm very, very, very scared of both Congress as exists or Pam or whatever else drafting this thing. So this is one that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. There's no official language yet. This is just speculation, but this is something that once again, you need an incompetent AG to get through. So let me get through all these things here. First of all, Gunslinger for 50. Let's give a little thank you. Just love what you're done. Love what you're doing. Let's go. Stay based. Hey, man, listen, I'm going to keep giving it out. I'm going to keep giving out honesty on left and right. Some of you may not like what I'm saying. That's fine. As long as you're respectful in the chat and you give me a respectful dissent or a respectful disagreement, please feel free to disagree with me, right? I'm okay with that. Don't violate YouTube terms of service. Don't try to get things banned. Don't say anything that's wild and out there or trying to provoke drama. But if you have a sincere question or a sincere disagreement, let me know. I'm open for that. I'm open for that because this is a discussion. This is something where we can share our opinions, right? Yen Song Huang for 10 says, I'm not saying that the radical left should go unpunished, but I fear some of the trends on X. It feels like any criticism of Charlie can be used to ostracize someone. Where the draw line is important. I agree. Now, here's the thing. If you are calling for death or violence, you should clearly be removed from your job. And once again, remember, removing someone from their job is a lot different than criminal punishment, right? So removing someone from their job, criminal punishment. So let me go full screen on this. I am pro removing people from their job if they celebrate violence, glorify violence, call for death, or call for future assassinations. That they all need to go. Those people need to go, right? Now, if you're somebody that is like, I disagreed with him and I didn't like him, right? And that's all you're saying. Okay, that's a fringe, maybe a borderline case, right? But if you're like, yay, he's dead, right? And an employer wants to fire you, they do have the right to do that. That's America. They have the right to do that. Now, can you be jailed for that? No, you cannot be jailed for that. And here's the thing. There's some corporations that are going to be okay with you saying, yay, Charlie Kirk is dead, right? And there clearly exist out there. There's organizations that are very, very left-wing that might be okay with that. But there's other organizations that don't want that. And they'll be boycotted, et cetera, right? There's other economic repercussions for that. So once again, a lot of this battle, the part of this battle is legal, but it's legal in the sense that employers can choose. They can choose whether or not they decide to remove you or not. And that's a freedom that we have in America. KMW for 10. Thank you. Said, can Twitch admin logs be subpoenaed? Yes. Magza Poppin says, this may have been asked, but what are your thoughts regarding the folks getting fired for quoting Charlie Kirk? They may have a cause of action. And also, I think, and once again, those companies need to be boycotted. And those companies also are probably ones you can report to OSHA. So I would, as a person getting fired, report them to OSHA immediately. Say there was an unsafe environment here. These people were worshiping death, right? If that was what they're doing, right? If it's accurate, which probably it is, right? I would report that. Detached due to age, is that a fair description? Yes, that's true. That's true. They like, look, my mom, hello, mom. I love my mom. She watches all my videos, but does she get all the internet references I make? No, right? Of course not, because I reference some things she doesn't know about, right? But so even internet side, there can be some like detached due to just even lack of interest, like, oh, a younger generation watches different media than older generation. There's nothing wrong with that, right? And some people, there's some crossover. There's some people I know that, are watching, the newest anime and they're 70, right? That's fine. It's cool. But once again, I'm talking about Congress. And if you look at Congress people and you listen to them, they generally don't understand the internet. And they often ask very bad questions about the internet. Table Turn says, Milky incels incoming. Josh said, you hear about Pluto? Messed up, right? I know it's messed up. It's messed up what they did to Pluto. Really what they did to them. Systemic racism. King Lugia for 15 Malaysian ringgit says, hey, I just want to be in a free love party with Democratic Jovians and Martians and Andromeda Chads and getting stuff full of their generosity. Hey, yeah. Dehako says Antifa fits the U.S. government's definition of domestic terrorism. Declaration long overdue. We're going to get into that. There is no definition of domestic terrorism, Deha. So let me put this out here. Domestic terrorism is not a thing. So Brian Krasstein is possibly right about this. We're going to talk about this, though, because he's partly right and mostly wrong. And there's a way to do this properly. But this requires a high IQ, which Pam Bondi doesn't have. That's our next topic here. Harrison Hess says, I just want to know what Plutonian did to get their entire planet demoted. Really bad stuff. Or DDS says, you're right on. These things can go both ways, and free speech doesn't mean you have to like. Exactly. In fact, you should dislike some people's speech. That's a healthy society. A healthy society has speech you don't agree with, but you don't get killed for it, and you don't get jailed for it. A healthy society, you are able to say crazy things, but that you cannot get killed for or jailed for, right? As long as they're not criminal, that's it. Just don't call for violence. You can say crazy things. And don't defame people. That's another one, right? Don't call them a criminal. I feel like there should be, they should just make it to where these major media networks are held accountable inciting or defaming people. Yes, I do agree with that. Once again, I think we can use existing defamation laws and remove some of the protections for media, right? And we're going to see that in some cases. We have the Nichols versus 10 bars case, which once again, there's 3,000 of you in here. Only about 1,000 or so people, maybe 1,500 were in the Nichols versus 10 bars case. But that case is super important because it's going to establish that fake news journalism is defamatory. And if we can get some of this fake news journalism held as defamation, we're going to be winning. And guys, by the way, did you see what happened to Jimmy Kimmel? See what happened to Jimmy Kimmel? You guys aware of that? Maybe I should pull that up real quick. We're on a live, so we can just do things at my speed, right? We can do things at my speed. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to need to move back. Because hold on, let me do this too. Let me move back that fast because I want to do this kind of slow with you guys. I want to enjoy this. All right, we had Jimmy Kimmel over here, who just got fired for associating the killer of Charlie Kirk with MAGA, right? He just got fired for that. Here we go. Yeah, here we go. Let's show this article if you guys don't know that. I think this is pretty big news. We see Nexstar affiliates to preempt Jimmy Kimmel Live. Other people have fired him, removed him. So once again, a lot of people are getting fired. A lot of people are getting removed. A lot of shows are dropping right now like flies. This is good news. This is very, very good news to see these things dropping, right? Okay, let's get into this declaration. So many of you probably saw this today, and I'm glad I waited because this has caused a lot of commentary that's incorrect, even people on the right, okay? People on the right are super interested in this, but they don't know what's going down here. Before we get into this designation of Antifa as a terrorist organization, let me get a couple more. Aldrius3214 says, hello there. I love your content, legal insight on a lot of stuff that's happening. Way too many people, even non-content creators, are saying crazy stuff like Assange and Destiny. Mars for the win. Yeah, and people need to be careful, even on the right, and what they're saying. We need to use precision of language, etc. Domestic terrorism is defined in 18 USC Code 2331. That does not involve designating a group as the official designation of a group as a domestic terrorist group, like an FTO, right? Like an FTO. So I know what you're saying, right? I know in terms of like defining the terms, right? But you need to have a process for defining a official organization, and that does not exist, right? That doesn't exist. Once again, there's a way around this, and I'm going to tell you the perfect way around this. There's a perfect way around this. I have such sites to show. Sorry, I got that already. My WASP band is a teacher in Florida. He has to sign an ethics code yearly on his contract. Do these teachers not remember that? The teachers are going crazy and they need to be fired en masse and lose their teaching licenses. Jerryhen for 5 said the lizard people from Neptune are feeling kind of left out. I suppose that's why they're blue. Well, here, the thing is with the lizard people, they want to be underground. The lizard people want to be underground. They don't want to be seen. Baron says pineapple belongs on pizza and steak well done. I agree. Gary Lee says age limits for politicians, age 67 is the cutoff. Turtle Wow Sucks says Destiny versus Odablock in a debate. Who wins? We don't give attention to Destiny. Destiny clearly has a mental illness, right? We don't pay attention to Destiny. He's kind of getting what's coming to him, but we don't need to pay attention to him. Taishi Laferet says, is it legal to fire people for bad takes? Yes, it is. It is legal to fire people for a bad take on social media if you don't like that, right? There's a lot in the US. Unfortunately, in most places, we have employment at will. Employment at will means you could fire somebody for anything at any time in most cases. Now, there are places like California with the Gina Carano lawsuit where you cannot fire people for political takes, right? So if you're posting something based on politics, you can't fire someone for that. Other states don't have those protections, right? But most of the cases, you can fire somebody for something that perhaps damages your company's reputation. We have morality clauses, which I've talked about. If it makes your company's reputation look bad, well, guess what? Celebrating violence makes your reputation look bad. That's plenty of grounds. Hugashaka said, in Minecraft seems a bit harsh towards Minecraft. Can we change it to in Roblox? No, because in Roblox is even worse. And Roblox involves what seems to be, and, shout out to Schlepp, who's actually a buddy of mine now. We talk, we've had some DMs together, which he wanted me to keep confidential. But Roblox is real bad. Kyle Johnson for 5 says, have you seen the latest Tectone video to Hassan? To be fair, how do you feel it is on legality? Do you what he says in the video stay true as permissible? I don't know which Tectone video. You'd have to send me the video. I saw his compilation of Tectone's Tectone's compilation of Hassan's violent rhetoric. That was fine, but I think there's multiple videos. Krampus for €5 says moving day today, so caught the stream for once, so I had to get early. Cool. Shane Reynolds says, what can be done about stuff that is posted or on the news that is taken purposely out of context to make it look a certain way? That's what I think might be defamation. That's where it might cross the line of defamation. Shin Jack says, if person 1 says kill all Yahtzees and their friend says person 3 is a Yahtzee, does it constitute a threat of bodily harm? It depends on the context, but let's say they're talking about we need to kill that Yahtzee specific person. Yes, that they're identifying an individual and calling them a Yahtzee and saying we need to go get that person. So yes, that could be in that context. But once again, it's case by case. The law is case by case. It needs to be very precisely applied. Once again, need somebody smart to do that. Not good old Pam, right? Let's get back to this. Here. Sci Freak says, Ambrose Bierce, the Devil's Dictionary, bigot, one who obstinately and zealously attached to an opinion that you do not entertain. Yeah, exactly. And once again, that is a reasonable definition, right? That's a possible and reasonable definition of that. Free speech to spew hate, free speech to goon. Okay. A lot of gooners out there. Raging Noob, OCAE says, Raging became a new member. Welcome. Yunsong for 10 says, maybe it's a wild idea, but I don't think news media should be involved in intention-based monetization. It's a problem for well over a decade. Journalism is compromised. Journalism is fully compromised, and it is a massive, massive, massive problem. So I agree with that sentiment. Renazora was here, says Antifa has a presence in cities. Rose City Antifa has existed in Portland since 2007 and has instigated much political violence. We're going to talk about Antifa next. And guys, my argument about Antifa is very, very nuanced, but this is the way to do it. And Pam Bondi and Trump are already screwing this up in how they're talking about this. Drop Barracuda says, I don't know what we're yelling about. I'm not yelling. Who's yelling? Neocena says, next member only stream, we should discuss galactic law. Yes, let's do that. Elicious said, thoughts about testimonialism, free speech 2.0. I'd have to look more into that. Mitch Horn says, I like you as a lawyer YouTuber. Unlike Legal Eagle, who bashes Trump every video to promote his brand as a gift, you do different topics. Exactly. And once again, I give out fair criticism on both sides. I'm criticizing Trump in a way today, not so much for maybe his heart is in the right place, but he's using the wrong people. I don't know. Not inside his brain, but I try to be fair and focus on the law, because Legal Eagle, he has TDS, he has Trump derangement syndrome, right? And that kind of, that leads him down a path where he gets away from the law. Richard Bermer says you actually watch the Jimmy Kimmel monologue as you are misinformed. Just watch it on YouTube. Okay. I've seen a lot of it. I'll watch it again. Right. I think I saw at least like half of it. I don't know. I think there may be more, but I'll rewatch it. That's fine. I don't think I'm misinformed here. Caught yourself saying hate speech. The redefinitions worm into the mind. Their scope is grander than you may. That's the insidious part, right? Is that you can make some scuff and you can say it yourself because these things sound the same. Hate crime, hate speech, right? So yes, that is the problem. That's the problem with this. Let's remove that word. Let's not say that word. Let's talk about hate crimes, actual crimes, defamation, incitement, harassment, true threats. Those are fine, right? But you're right. The reason why they use that language is they want to confuse us. And even a lawyer, I get confused sometimes. I scuff sometimes. I'm not a perfect person, right? I make mistakes. I'm a real individual, right? I do this all myself. Yeah, I make mistakes. But you know what? When I do make a mistake, you guys catch me all the time. I go back and I correct myself. And I say, you know what? I don't mean that. I actually mean this. Let me be more precise. I narrow it down. Because we want to be a laser beam. We do not want to be a nuclear bomb. We want like a space laser, right? Like we want the Jovian space laser that just comes in and zaps people, right? Like if you watch the great show, I actually like Alice in Borderland, right? They're coming out with the next season, which we'll see if that's good or not. But like the laser that comes down and just zaps everybody when they die, that's what we want. We want the Alice in Borderland space laser, right? Shark Tank. Do you think Hassan will face legal trouble this year? Yes. Rona Zora says Antifa committed murder in 2020, not 2007. My bad. Jones has said, was Pam maybe trying to use a cleaver with hate speech, i.e. trying to use the left's language against them? TBH don't like her much, not after Trevor Milton. I don't know. I don't know her motivation. She's either really dumb or there's some political shenanigans here. I don't know which it is. But honestly, it doesn't matter. She needs to go. Penn the Mighty said, what if the messaging from Trump is just bait to get his appointments worked up so they make arguments that actually do not apply, like with Doge and Musk trolling? Well, some of the arguments are like quasi-valid. I hate that I had to partially agree with Brian Krasenstein. It's stupid. Let me pull up this one real quick and get this comment. So this is the post by Brian Krasenstein, who obviously he is very much political, very much an operative here. But this is one of the stupidest statements he made ever. I am Antifa, meaning I am against fascism. All Americans should be. Antifa is not an organization. That's not true, by the way. That's a lie. This is a complete lie. So Antifa is an organization. They're going to try to, this is what they're going to try to say. Like, oh no. And by the way, him calling himself Antifa, he's opened himself up to getting his bank accounts frozen, to being potentially arrested, right? Good job there, bro. Good job there, bro. I can't wait for you to be debanked. That's going to be fun. Domestic groups also cannot be formally designated as terrorist organizations under U.S. law. Trump did not have the legal authority to unilaterally designate Antifa as a terrorist organization. No federal statute allows for a president to make such designation domestically. Okay. Of these statements, let's say these 4 statements, forget the I am Antifa. 2 are false and 2 are true. This is false. I am Antifa is not an organization. That's false. This is true. Domestic organizations also cannot be formally designated as terrorist organizations under loose law. This is technically true. Trump does not have the legal authority to unilaterally designate Antifa as a terrorist organization. This is false, but there's some like shades in there. And the last one is true. There is no federal statute to allow the president to make a designation domestically. There's so much nuance to this, though, that he's missing what's going on here. And the problem is that people like Pam Bondi, and let me get into the video with Trump talking about this earlier. Here it is. Pam Bondi is leading him down this road of talking about domestic terrorism. And that is a albatross. I think what you need to do is you need to treat them like the cartels or the mafia, which we have successfully prosecuted in the past. So how you do this is you treat the domestic side like the mafia, and you prosecute them like the old mob. You treat the foreign elements like the cartels, which have some members inside of the US, right? But largely they have foreign backing. And I think you can get what's called a foreign terrorist organization designation, which we do have a process for, and which, by the way, it's bulletproof. It is bulletproof against Antifa. It will change everything. We can get them all with that. But they don't know what the hell they're talking about here because they're talking about domestic terrorism, which, once again, it's a good buzzword. It sounds good. I know what you're saying, but legally, it's the stupidest thing ever. And I'm going to explain why.
Well, it's something I would do. Yeah, if I have support from the people back here, I think we'd start with Pam. I think, but I would if you.
See, we'll start with Pam. We will start with Pam. She doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. Let's not start with her.
I would do that 100%, and others also, by the way. But Antifa is terrible.
Are there other groups that you can think of?
There are other groups. Yeah, there are other groups. We have some pretty radical groups, and they got away with murder. And also, I've been speaking to the Attorney General about bringing RICO against some of the people that you've been reading about.
Now that's smart. Now that part is smart. RICO is okay. That's the part that's okay. Once again, that part is okay. But let's see the rest of this, right? Let's see what he says after this.
They've been putting up millions and millions of dollars for agitation. These aren't protests. These are crimes, what they're doing, where they're throwing bricks at cars of ICE and Border Patrol. And they come in with a beautiful new car. They're so proud. It's Border Patrol, ICE, it's got whatever it is. And they're throwing rocks at it. And after 50 yards, it looks like an old beat up vehicle. It was just brand new. It was just bought for the purposes. And they don't have to take that anymore. I let it be known. We'll take responsibility. They don't have to take it anymore. And they don't want to take it. They were told by a past administration, it became almost a culture. If somebody throws a rock at you, do nothing. If somebody spits in your face, do nothing. And I say, when they spit, you hit. Do whatever you want. You do whatever the hell you want. I watched it so sick it made me. For 4 years, I had to sit home and watch people screaming at policemen and spitting in their face, and they weren't able to do anything. They just had a grin and bear. They're standing up like a piece of steel. And a woman, in many cases, women, you can see they're professional agitators. I had one the other night. I had 4 the other night, all in one group, total phonies. I started to scream when I got into a restaurant, something with Palestine. And I said, well, I'm doing a great job for peace in the Middle East. I should get lots of awards for that, right? With the Abraham Accords and everything else. But a woman just stood up and started screaming. And she got booed out of the place, too. There were a lot of people in the restaurant. I went there to show how safe, and it was safe. I mean, the woman is just a mouthpiece. All she was a.
So that was like the clip. But the one thing that the road that they're going down is going down the domestic terrorism route. And here's why the distinction matters. Let me get into this very clearly. And this is something like a legal distinction, right? So obviously, a lot of people talking about here, this tweet, major terrorist organization. This is not an executive order. So this tweet here is not an executive order. Okay. It's not an executive order. So we need an executive order to give if it was going to be domestic terrorism process, right? And let me explain the difference. So there's kind of 3 things you can do with a terrorist designation. Number 1, which is something you don't need to make an official designation. You just need maybe an executive order or maybe just a direction. All Trump can do right today is he can direct the FBI, direct law enforcement to say, hey, go after Antifa. And that's bringing RICO charges. You can do this today. So this should be done. And I agree with this part, right? This is easy. And so this Trump can do today. He's probably already done this, right? So this part has been done. But about this domestic terrorist organization thing, there is no set method to designate an official domestic terrorist organization. You would have to make one up. You'd have to legally invent a process. There's only 2 ways to do that. Number 1 is by executive order, and number 2 is by Congress. If you make an executive order on this, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. the thing that's happened to almost all of Trump's executive orders. If you've been paying attention, if you've been awake, if you've been just like understanding what's happened, almost all of the executive orders have been blocked by activist judges, right? So an activist judge is going to block the domestic terrorist organization if you do it by an executive order. And beyond that, it may not survive judicial review. So even if it goes up to the appellate court or the Supreme Court, they may overturn it, right? They may overturn it. And Congress, let's say if you try to get Congress to set up a process, do you trust Congress to do this? They're going to be slow. They're going to be stalled. They're going to be compromised. They're going to put in pork barrel politics. They're going to put in extra language. I don't trust Congress to set up this process. I really don't. I truly don't. So what should we do? Instead, let's use the foreign terrorist organization designation. This is the right thing to do. This is the right thing to do. It already exists. And shout out to Andy No. Andy No was talking about this. And Andy is 100% right on this. This is the way to go on this. Antifa does qualify as a foreign terrorist organization. We have an established method under the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act, and it occurs all within the Department of State. So guess what? The Department of State handles all of this. Congress doesn't touch it. Nobody touch it. And we already do this. We've done this dozens of times. I'm going to show you what we've designated this year as terrorist organizations. And guess what we've designated? Gangs and cartels. Gangs and cartels are exactly like Antifa. Antifa is extremely similar to a gang or a cartel. So we should treat them like a gang or a cartel, like a mafia, etc. Right? That is spot on. But Bondi doesn't see this because she has the IQ of a carrier pigeon, right? And carrier pigeons are kind of cute, right? But that said, there is almost no chance that this foreign terrorist organization designation is blocked by judicial review. Number one, a representative of Antifa has to show up within 30 days to challenge this. And the scope of review is so narrow. It's essentially the only thing the court looks at is, okay, did the State Department submit evidence on all three elements? And we're going to go through the elements in a second. And I'm going to show you how there is easy proof of all three elements, okay? There's easy proof. But beyond that, they say, is it arbitrary and capricious and an abuse of discretion or otherwise illegal? And guess what? This standard, arbitrary and capricious, the government almost always wins. If you know anything about the constitutional law, arbitrary and capricious is really hard to prove. It's really hard to prove. So the government is going to win the challenge. And guess what? No foreign terrorist organization, I did the research on this, guys, not a single FTO designation has ever been overturned. So good luck, Antifa. It's never been done before by anybody. And people have tried. They have tried to overturn it. It's never worked. Never. And it's not subject to the interference of Congress. Here's the criteria. Here's the criteria, guys. This is all you need for the designation. This is all you need. Three things. The group must be foreign, engage in terrorism, threaten U.S. nationals, national security, or foreign relations. That's it. So I'm actually going to skip the first one. Let's talk about terrorism. Trump just talked about it. We've got multiple incidences of what would constitute terrorism and violence, etc. National security, threaten U.S. nationals, foreign relations. We have all three of those, but you only need one. You only need one of those three. So if you're going to pick one, national security is clearly there. Also threatening U.S. nationals, that's clearly there as well. So all of those would check the box. Now let's talk about foreign. Here's the one that people are going to debate. Because they're going to say, oh, these are loose, unaffiliated cells and they're not affiliated. No. Shut up. You've got plenty of cartels and gangs that are only loosely affiliated. They call themselves the same thing, but they have separate leadership. They don't really communicate that like super directly, but they hold the same ideals, motives, and overall aim. So you can be a cartel like MS-13 or a gang, MS-13 or the Sinaloa cartel, which has people in the United States, right? There are people of the Sinaloa cartel and MS-13 in the United States, but the origin is foreign. The origin for Antifa is Germany, is Deutschland, right? Deutschland, right? Now, I cannot say this word despite speaking a embarrassingly bad amount of German. I can never say this word correctly. It's antifascistische action, with a K, action with a K. I can never say fascistische. It's like I cannot say it, or antifascistische. I can't say that right. My German just messes up there. I cannot do that word, but it's German, right? It's German. And a big thing is there's a super amount of members that are foreign, right? Yeah. Somebody here saying we have Antifa in Holland. They're around the world. They're Antifa. Yeah. This is how it's spelled, right? But it's German. So this is a big one. And this just came out today. Canada, Trudeau and Canada is funding Antifa. You can't make this up. Discord chat platform scrutinized in Kirk assassination used Canadian leftist networks to circulate political target files. Lawyer alleges federally funded Canadian anti-hate network has aided Antifa-aligned groups that are compiling private dossiers on citizens via Discord. You cannot make this stuff up. Someone needs to clip this. Please clip this. The clippers out there. Eagle, clip this, bro. Canada, Trudeau, is funding Antifa. This proves the element of foreign support. And as much as we may or may not view our Canadian brothers as foreign, that is a foreign country. And we are not obliged to support the radical leftist views of Canada, right? And I love that there's so many base Canadians, by the way. I love you guys. You guys are a lot. I know a lot of base Canadians. I love you. One of my best friends is Canadian right now. He's out in the gold mines. He's working hard in the gold mines, right, of Canada, out in the north, right? I love my Canadians, but your government, let's admit it, is pretty far left. And you're trying to support American far left organizations, right? That is a big deal. This is a massive deal. And I think it's more than enough justification to do this. By the way, they get a lot of money from Germany too. Germany sends a lot of money to Antifa. There's a lot of foreign money coming in. And that's huge because stopping the money flow is the best thing that this does. Let's talk about that. Right? First of all, here's some of the designated FTOs. These are all the ones that are done this year. So this is the ones that Trump has done. Let's look at this. It started with at the bottom with MS-13. MS-13 is an extremely violent gang. They're extremely violent gang. And it goes all the way down Tren de Aragua, Carteles Unidos, Cartel de Golfo, La Nueva Family, Michon Acana, Cartel de Noreste, like all these cartels, Sinaloa cartel, right? Los Lobos, Los Chaneros, right? You've got a lot of cartels here. Now, some of these are, some Islamic groups. There's one here that's a separatist group in Pakistan, the BLA, right? But by and large, these are gangs and cartels. Gangs and cartels are exactly like Antifa. And let's talk about this is the authority that they used to designate the cartels. Look at this. You can literally replace the word cartel with Antifa and just copy paste the word Antifa over cartel, and this works. Let's read this for a second. Okay. This order creates a process by which certain, let's say Antifa, right, and other organizations will be designated as FTOs, right, or specifically global terrorists consistent with AIPA, right? International cartels, let's replace this with Antifa. Antifa constitutes a national security threat beyond that posed by traditional organized crime. That's true. Convergence between Antifa and a range of extra-hemispheric actors from designated foreign terrorist organizations to antistic foreign governments. This is true. And I hate to say it, but even Canada, if they're helping, they're an antagonistic foreign government. I'm sorry. Once again, I love Canadians. That's nothing against Canadians, but it's against the government, right? The government is acting as an antagonistic foreign government. If they are funding radical groups that are engaging in terrorism in the United States. Right? Are they engaged in complex adaptive systems, characteristic of entities engaged in insurgency and asymmetric warfare? Yes, they're using the same strategy of insurgency and asymmetric warfare. And have they infiltrated into foreign governments in the Western Hemisphere? Yes. All those things would match. So let's say they get this designated. Let's say they get this designated. What happens? Oh, this is great. This is great. Brian Krasenstein, who called himself Antifa. What's going to happen to him? Well, it's illegal to knowingly provide material resources and support to a designated FTO. So this is how we get all the domestic people. So all the domestic people, at a minimum, they're supporting the foreign elements, the foreign principle, the foreign objectives of Antifa, right? So that comes back domestically. So you don't need necessarily that domestic designation. Once you've got that FTO designation, now anybody who supports them is criminally liable. You see that? We got him there, boys. Hold on. I'll play the clip.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
But that's a high IQ move that it takes an AG that knows what they're doing to do. Pam Bondi doesn't understand this. She literally doesn't understand this. Representatives and members of the FTO, if they're aliens, non-U.S. nationals, are inadmissible to the U.S. and deported. That's huge. So all of these foreigners, these Canucks coming in there. I love you, Canadians. But these activists, right, that are coming in, and they can be deported. They can be stopped. If they're coming in from Germany, from Holland, from France, from the UK, they can all be stopped and deported. And here's the big one. Here's the biggest one. All their assets are frozen. U.S. financial institutions possessing and controlling any assets of a designated FTO may block all transactions. So all that Antifa money is gone. All of that money that the government of Canada paid with their taxes to send to support Antifa is now frozen. Ain't that a thing? Ain't that a thing? Huge, huge, huge W here. But you've got to follow the right process. You cannot follow a process in which you don't come in with precision and know what you're talking about. And that's what I worry about with Pam Bondi. So once again, I'm very fair about this. I'm not in here gung-ho, hey, Trump, go in and blow up our rights. No, I am very concerned about our rights. However, if you're going to do this the right way. Do it the right way. Do it with a precise way, right? Now I'm going to get these super chats, and then I'll maybe have one or two other things I'm going to talk about. I think there's like one other thing I want to talk about with the FCC, right? Which is, Benny Johnson posted this. I want to kind of get into this a little bit. But yeah, that'll be like an ending, just kind of commentary. Okay. Pop this up. Purple Botch, welcome as a member. And thank you for the 5 Legal Mindset memberships. Very, very, very generous. I like the Spike Misses. Half of my ex-friends are Antifa. I'm so sad they chose the path. Once again, I know a lot of people that have chosen the bad path. And I am trying to advise anybody that I know, even people that I know have different political beliefs, to follow a good path, to follow a positive path. And I know, guys, it may seem like right now there's a lot of fire coming from the left, but here's what I have to say. If you are a non-violent leftist and you are a good person, you're not the enemy. You're a friend here. If you are a non-violent leftist, let me say this real quick. You should want to remove these people because they're making you look bad. If you are a person who is a leftist or whatever, and you're non-violent, you're a peaceful person, you're a good person, you need to remove these people. They're making you look bad. You're being dragged down with them. We need to, whether we're on the left or right, pursue things through civil discourse and debate like Charlie would have wanted. Whether we're on the left or the right, we can both agree on that. Violent people need to go. All the violent people need to go, right? But right now, there's a problem with the violent people on the left. We need to take care of that. If there's a future problem with the violent people on the right, we'll take care of that too, right? But right now, there's a left problem. We got to take care of that, by and large, right? And that will make it better for everybody. Deja said I was referencing U.S. Code at 18 USC 23315 and 6 USC 101 earlier for definition of domestic terrorism. Per your analysis, RICO and FTO are more effective. I agree. They're way more effective. But I know where you're arguing, Deja. Yes, there's a definition, but it's not a process for designating an organization. But your heart's in the right place. Gomen Asari says, as a Canadian, if you take their money, can you give it back to us somehow? Our government doesn't even have a budget, so they don't know where the money is going. And that's a problem for y'all. And once again, I'm an American, so I'm not a Canadian lawyer, but it's not good when you find these things, that the money is going to fund Antifa, right? You should be mad about that. I would be mad about that. Zenzu said it would be worth tagging JD Vance when your Fast Facts goes live. Sure, I'll tag JD Vance. John says the sooner Americans realize the EU was founded strictly to undermine our economy, the better. Those Eurotards are not our friends, never were. Once again, I will say this. Once again, I had a very good conversation with some very based polls yesterday. There's good people in the EU. A lot of my fans are in the EU, right? There are good people in the EU. Not everybody who lives in the EU is bad. The problem is a lot of the governments are supporting things which aren't in the favor of the people and the real people, the native people of the land, the citizens of the land, not people that are coming in and abusing the rights, abusing their privileges, committing crimes, right? That's not good. And they're violent, right? That the violent people need to go. Whether they need to be deported or jailed is up to the country, right? Spark68 for 10 says Antifa isn't a formal org. Underlying commie orgs use their name to hide behind it, aka WWP, Answer, PSL, RevCam, coordinating with each other. They're basically funded by PAC, Soros, etc. Well, that's why they're going to need to be creative in doing this. But I think you can do this, and you can designate, if you really want to get really creative, you can designate the foreign ones, right? So all the little foreign elements and all the foreign names, just do a blanket where you designate a bunch of them, and then any domestic organization that's working with them. So you find the links, which you're going to be able to find through the Discord logs, right? Check the Discord logs. If they're aiding each other, boom, you got them. You got them. So while they call themselves loose organizations, all you got to do is find a tie between them. And once you find those 1 or 2 degrees of separation, you can get them all. And then you've got RICO charges. You've got all sorts of other creative stuff. So I know what you're saying here, but yeah, that's not going to work. Don't let people wiggle out on this one. Visitor to Chicha says deportation petition for Hassan. I don't know what is his immigration status. Like, is he naturalized? Is he naturalized? I think he is. He is a U.S. citizen, so he's born in New Jersey. So yeah, that's he was born in New Jersey. So that's the problem. Once again, that's going to be not a deportable thing. So yeah, just spitting facts. Once again, I'm not going to lie to you guys. Unfortunately, Charlie Kirk is a perfect example of the difference between words being claimed as violence and actual violence. That's right. And let's live in a world of Charlie Kirk. Let's live in a world where we can use our words to battle, not violence. Jordan said, how about Insurrection Act? I know, but here's the thing, guys. This is how I feel about the Insurrection Act. It's something novel and creative. And why the hell do we have to use the novel and creative stuff instead of the stuff where there's a clear process? It's easy to do. It's a layup and it's non-controversial. If we use the Insurrection Act, there's a chance. I don't know what the Supreme Court's going to do. And I don't want a chance of the Supreme Court overturning it. With the FTO designation, it literally has never been overturned ever. I like winning. I like layups. I don't want to go for why do you go for the Hail Mary when you can just run it in? You're like 1 yard in, from the touchdown or whatever, and you're trying to go for some crazy play. Why do you do that? Unless you've got some reason why we need to go to the Insurrection Act, I think that's a little risky from a legal standpoint, right? Cat G said, I'm a little late, but we'll be watching the beginning tomorrow, like the last one. I wrote you about that. Great stuff as always. Thank you. Kyle Johnson said, I have the experience from the military. But can you explain the difference between a terrorist and an insurgency? Are the laws different? Well, I guess there are also military designations, et cetera. There's also a lot of like war crime laws. So like there's a lot of stuff like typically, if something is, it's like military terminology versus legal terminology, right? So in this case, we're talking about terrorism. That's a specific legal term in the United States. There's not as many legal terms related to insurgency outside of like talking about military language. But I get what you're saying. And from a colloquial speech, like it would typically mean the same thing. Colloquial mean like common speech. So if I call somebody an insurgent and I call them a terrorist, right? Most people would say, oh, that's about the same thing. But there are some legal distinctions in different areas, right? So once again, it's dependent. Are you talking about international war crime law, or are you talking about designation of terrorist groups in the United States? There's no designation of insurgent groups in the United States. That's not a thing. So there's your thing. But good question. Very good question. That is admittedly confusing, right? Flavored Mold says, what if Antifa gets money from outside the U.S.? Yes, and that's the whole point. They do get money from outside the U.S. Once again, let's go back here. I cannot believe this when I saw this. I saw this today. I could not believe this. Once again, insane stuff coming out right now. Every day stuff happens, and it's crazy. It's crazy. Snap Crackle Bar for 10 says, left. Kirk's unalive is justified. Hate, bigot. Also the left. Love, free Palestine. As all gays, trans isn't even a concept, are tortured unalive. Make it sound, makes, yeah, no, I know. Once again, the political side is one thing, but legally, a lot of the stuff that's being said, if you look at what it is, it's incitement to violence, right? Hugashaka for 129 South Swedish krona says Antifa exists in most of the world when national sells. There we go. As an organization, pretty much is global. Shouldn't the domestic part of the terrorists be dropped? Yes, it's unnecessary. There's more people in Antifa outside the United States than inside. So it is correct to call it origin foreign from Germany, largely foreign, block all that foreign money, block all the foreign Antifa members, bring criminal charges against anybody supporting them. And we get a lot of people. That's a lot of arrests. Calm minds must overcome emotional reflexes. Yes, the law must be used like a scalpel, yet most use it like a hammer, like a laser beam. Hayden J. Powers says, when I was involved in criminal justice academia, we looked at Antifa as a cell network like AQ. They're an organization just decentralized. Exactly. That's exactly right. Richard Berna says Antifa is not a single centralized organization, but a loose decentralized movement. Yes, but that doesn't mean it can't be prosecuted. This is a massive red herring. Do not let people let you believe that because it's a loose, decentralized network, they're suddenly immune. No, it does not matter. Where in the designation does it say it has to be a single organized group? That's not a thing. That's not a thing. That is a red herring. Legally, it doesn't matter if it is decentralized or it's centralized. It does not matter. Right? Pizza Boy says, wasn't Stephen Paddock linked with Antifa? I don't know. Drop Barracuda says, does John Q. Public have any protections for preventing, stopping, detaining identified domestic terrorists versus criminals? That's a very interesting question. I honestly don't know. I mean, that would depend a lot on like what the situation was. Like if somebody is actively committing a crime and threatening the life of others, right? Many states there's laws to intervene, but that's a state by state analysis. There's like, I imagine you're implying there could be self-defense here. So there's a lot of different scenarios. So that's a really complex one to answer. But I do appreciate the complexity. There could be, once again, there could be a situation like, let's say, somebody is like actively threatening other people. It's like a Kyle Rittenhouse situation, right? People are trying to bring up Kyle Rittenhouse again. Kyle Rittenhouse was clearly acting in self-defense, the most clear case of self-defense ever, and was politically prosecuted unjustly. We all watched that case. It was insane how bad they were. And almost all of them were criminals that were coming after him, right? If you're in a Kyle Rittenhouse type situation, right? Self-defense is applicable, right? Self-defense is applicable. So Aldrius 3214 says, will there be more groups like Antifa from both sides be flagged as a terrorist organization? I'm neutral, but I don't feel safe with Antifa alone. That's right. That's right. I think that what needs to be done. Every violent group, just like the cartels, let's go to that one, right? Just like the cartels here, see how there's many cartels? Los Chaneros, Los Lobos, Cartel de Noreste, Jalisco, Sinaloa. Let's fill this up. Let's fill this up with a bunch of radical, violent groups, and let's get rid of them all. Marksman says, sorry, I'm late. Ketamine mining went long today. Reference to Don Bongwater, who's actually a really smart guy. He DM'd me. He's a really smart guy. Good memes. I can't watch them because I'll get demonetized, but good meme channel. Snap Crackle Pop for 5 says, all I want is that decentralized all I want centralized is a steak burrito in my belly. Oh man, that sounds good. That sounds good. Doodle said, as a lawyer, if you had 3 wishes, what would it say? Objection. No, I really don't know. I honestly don't know. It's like 3 wishes. I'd have to ponder on that pretty hard. But I will say one thing I wish is, I mean, if I can wish away like this, okay, we live in a world that's nonviolent, right? That is one thing I think would be good for everybody else, right? And we debate through nonviolent means, right? We solve our problems through nonviolent means. That would be a wish I would have, a genuine wish I would have. Lord Flufin says, I know exactly what the Supreme Court will do. We'll find an awkward way to not deal with the actual question, just like Roberts has done. That's exactly right. Do you really trust Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett to do this? They've messed up a lot of times. I don't fully trust them. I want a process that's bulletproof. Egg Chen says, do you agree the left has weaponized our rights against us? I think the pendulum swing in a way in which the laws were not enforced against the radical left. And that's a problem. Hellbat said, is there existing laws about aiding lawlessness? For example, everyone wearing a dress code, obstructing when officers go to arrest offenders? I mean, there's certain laws you're going to have against like obstruction of like roadways, etc., creating public nuisance, there's certain different laws. Once again, there's just local state variants. So I'm assuming there are laws there, right? There's obviously interfering with law enforcement officers, like obstructing a law enforcement officer. There's stuff like that at the local level, state level. So there's stuff like that, but I don't want to make a broad generalism because states have a lot of different laws. But there are laws. Drop Barracuda for says Germany, Anipilin needs to be a thing here. Well, it could be. Once again, it could be. Drop Barracuda says, coincidentally, paid in loonies. Thank you. John said the EU is a problem, not Europeans. I agree. And once again, I have European family, friends. I like Europe, Europeans, right? I have a problem with the EU most of the time because the regulations tend to hurt not just free speech, but tend to hurt individuals. Rocambole says, anyone who celebrates game ending others over political disagreements are no bueno. Left or right, it's irrelevant. I don't like either of them. I agree. I am really nonviolent. The big come for new member. Thank you. Visitor said, exile Hassan. Well, maybe we can, bankrupt Hassan, but not necessarily deport him. Alger Works says, hey, Legal Mindset, just saw your segment on side scrollers and formative stuff. Yeah, good stuff. I loved it. Siki said, how dare you dismiss the true Scottish Black Kings? Wally for $7.99 Oz said, it was just memeing before. Love y'all and just benchmarking my social barometer. Got to fight the psychosis somehow. That's all good. Vivi Chan says, Nux is getting death threats from radical leftists, I imagine. And once again, I got a lot of crazy stuff too, so it happens. Karudo Akira says Antifa infiltrate BLM, so that's going to be interesting on how that will be handled. Kai Guy Nikki said happening once equals standalone complex, happening a lot equal conspiracy. Snap Crackle Pop for 5 says ancient BCE wisdom, early bird get the worm, but the second mouse get the cheese. Okay. Real quick, I just want to show this one maybe real quickly, but it seems that the FCC is threatening action over misleading information. This is kind of a little thing that happened. I haven't had a chance to get a full PP on this, but the FCC is threatening immediate action against Jimmy Kimmel, ABC, and Disney for deliberately misleading the public by claiming Charlie Kirk's assassin was a MAGA conservative. Chairman Brennan Carr calls Kimmel's malicious lies truly sick, and they should result in Kimmel's immediate suspension and may lead to ABC losing its broadcast license. Chairman Carr confirmed the agency has a strong case to hold Kimmel, ABC, and Disney accountable for spreading dangerous, politically motivated misinformation. So that is really big news. That's the FCC acting there once again. For once, they're waking up. It's taken a while. Good job, FCC, for waking up. I will keep my eye on that, and I'll probably have, as like action happens in that area, I'll probably have a future episode on that. So that's something I'm going to keep my eye on, right? Guys, I have a Fast Facts episode that is going to come live right now. Stay where you are, and let me make sure this is all perfectly set up here, and we're all going to get put to the right place, not the wrong place. Okay, here we go. Yes. The right video. Not Johnny Somali. We're going to have a Johnny Somali update on Saturday. But this one is really, really good. It's very concise, and it needs to be shared out because people need to see this. When I post the Fast Facts, somebody suggested I tag JD Vance. I'm going to tag JD. I'm going to tag Trump. I'm going to tag a lot of people for that one. Get this one out there. Feel free to clip this, share this out. I'll try to have my clipper clipping this one, but please share this out. It's very important information. We need to educate those people in power. Until then, guys, stay abased, and I will catch you later.